Our speaker today is Felicia Mitchell. Felicia has been enjoying being accepted by the UU just as she is since Bob and Jane and others got it started. She has always loved to come and get a peek at her son's little hand in the hand tree quilt when she visits with us. She resides in Meadowview since 1987, retired from Emory and Henry in 2020, has been writing her poetry and blogs for Cure Today, and enjoying volunteer opportunities. Please help me welcome Felicia Mitchell.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, and thank you so much for being here. What I'm going to do is read a few poems and just reflect and or ramble, and then perhaps I think we said in the newsletter there would be some life lessons. I don't know, but there have been for me, and so that's what I'm going to do today. And so, for some reason, I got nervous all of a sudden, but here we go. So I have an agenda, greeting and thanks, open with a poem. So I thought I'd open with a sort of lighthearted and a poem, and in recognition of what I did yesterday, which was hike about not quite 6 mile round trip on a journey to see the skunk cabbage blooming, something that's always a thrill. So within this little book, Trail Magic, I have divided everything into sections with lessons, and the first section is called As Magical as a Single Life, and so it talks about magical things, and one of which is skunk cabbage. Ode to skunk cabbage. O harbinger of spring, emerging from this earth, almost like Cupid's arrow with a point to open hearts, but more like a flower that has waited all winter to peep up from the earth through brown leaves or snow, just as the sun promises to come a little closer to a Valentine like no other, this one and only earth, to warm us up once again. So that's that poem. If you ever need to interrupt, just raise your hand, and then that would be fine. Here's another one, sort of reverential. I'm from this first section, and a couple of years ago, I did a project for a lands project, documenting and writing poems about the area around White's Mill. And as I finished the last visit for that poetry project, this is what happened. Down by the riverside, I laid my burden down by the riverside, just as a black bear appeared in the pasture where I had been counting sheep that safely grazed while the bear stood, tall, staring, listening to me singing a hymn, as if I were waiting to watch a preacher emerge to dip me in the Holston like a penitent, instead of waiting to see what the bear would do. And then it did what bears do, ambled on, up the hill, and through the brush, away, away. By then I had stopped singing. The only holy need, I had gone with the bear across the hill, the sheepdog silent in the field, white as a Holy Ghost. So there's always a backstory to these poems. I had something very troubling on my mind, family thing, not my immediate family, you all know Guy, but anyway, we always have things we worry about, and there's something that's worried me for decades. And so this was the moment I let it go. I like to sing in the car. I love to sing, but only in the car or the shower. And I love old hymns just because, and often we'll sing one that comes to mind. And so that poem is about a bear, but it's also about letting go of a burden, sort of. So, okay. The next section is called Distracting Me from Myself. And I keep thinking someone will raise a hand. I'm going to read a poem that several people have written to say they like a lot. And sometimes it's hard for me to know anyway. But the interesting thing about this poem is, I'll say that after I read it. I'll just let you hear it first. But I guess I should say, within the cancer community, there is sort of a tattoo thing. Okay, so that's the backstory, and then I'll give you the front story when I finish. The tattoo I did not get. Bloodroot sends up leaves, angel wings on earth and flesh. A flower comes next. My right breast hollow is the opposite of spring. It has bloomed and gone. I look for flowers that grow on the sides of trails, my path a journey. My left breast, like sun, flesh flushing as winter wanes, its nipple blossoms. Where the sun falls first, a bloodroot will bloom early, its leaves a blessing. I do not need ink to replace what cancer took, no nipple tattoo. A scar is plenty, its track like a bird scratching for something hidden. A bloodroot roots deep, even deeper than earthworms. I kneel over it. So the backstory with that poem, well, first here's the literary lesson. That I taught for years a class on the haiku tradition, and I've studied, anyway, that poem the stanzas are made up of haiku. It's fun to use haiku in different ways. But more important, I thought, so I wrote this a while back, and here's the backstory. I kept a journal. I keep many journals, but I kept what I called in the middle of a medical appointment journal some years back, 15 years back. Y'all were so good to me that year. Anyway, January 3rd, 2010, these are my notes from I guess, an infusion appointment. Met with Dr. Davis, hiking is good, blood work and kidney function good. And so I remember asking him just after I started everything, and was it all right to hike? And I did, of course, tell my friends I wouldn't hike completely alone for a while, but sometimes I did. But so hiking is good. That's one of my lessons. And so here's a quote from Hippocrates to balance what I'm saying. And he said, walking is man's, and I use that, I should say error, but he said man's. Walking is man's best medicine. It's our best medicine, not the only medicine. The next section, just walking this walk. Oh, that poem, the tattoo poem, is from a section of poems all inspired by the Creeper Trail, time on the Creeper Trail, with my thoughts, with other people, with friends, with millipedes. And so I love creatures, all little creatures. So, but the next section, Just Walking This Walk, has poems inspired by my times on the Appalachian Trail. And I feel a little funny reading these because, I'm not a through hiker. And, our relationship with the trail is our relationship with the trail. It's not going to be so I feel like I should apologize to all of it. But it's just what I do. So I thought I'd read one with some humor and perhaps some wisdom. Anyway, this is called Appalachian Trail South. And of course, all of these are true stories. I lost the trail while I stood on the trail, leaves at my feet unlike breadcrumbs. I did not see the clues. I saw only light through open branches and rocks and boulders. I smelled winter touching autumn on its shoulders. Time had caught me and held me in its moment, the way a child is held just out of the womb. But just as I stood there, startled by a fear of stepping forward, a raven called from overhead, and 2 men came around the bend, heavy with their packs. I lost the trail, I told them, the men, the raven, rooted in the earth, leaves at my feet, unlike breadcrumbs. This is the AT South, one man said, gesturing at my feet, at all the leaves. And I said, I know. I knew where I was. I just did not know where I was. So you take that like on a cosmic level, but it's also true in the autumn. There are a lot of leaves, and of course there are those white blazes, but sometimes there's, a little bit of a stretch in between. And so I kind of scampered after those two men for a while, telling you exactly where I was. And I joke about that, but one thing I learned early on when I started hiking by myself was always leave with time to get back before dark. And then later I learned take stuff in case you don't. And now I have like a messenger thing. Well, I have a little gadget where I will never be out of touch with the rest of the world. But so there's that lesson. But what else will I read from that section? I think, well, I'll read Trail Magic. It feels like a personal poem to me. And anyway, I wrote this after a hike with my friend Gloria. She's not here, but a lot of these poems grew out of hikes with a lot of people, or with just me. So anyway, Trail Magic. Usually it is somebody with cookies who also brings cold milk or something like that, maybe hot chocolate instead of milk or cake instead of cookies. Sometimes it is a can of beer. It is always something as ordinary as kindness. Now and then it is a wind caught in the rocks that sounds like a whisper from your mother in the midst of a hike as winding as her life. On days like that, it is impossible not to stop in your tracks. It is impossible not to wonder what is going on. What is going on inside the rocks, inside that cave? Could there be another entrance into heaven? High atop the rocks today in late November, one white round-lobed hepatica bloomed, as if spring had never come and gone, as if winter was not days away, the first snowfall already fallen. I stopped in my tracks on the trail and studied it. This flower as real as the day was short, but when I lifted my camera to take a photo, I lost my focus and had to step back to search for it with naked eyes. By the time I failed to get a photo, the wind had stopped, the voice of my mother, or the wind, drifting across the rocks, up the mountain, into the sky. And y'all know I write a lot about my mother, so even in here, there's some poems with her, and so no questions yet. All right. So the next section is called "Where Everything You Need Is There," and it's just miscellaneous places I've hiked. Here, there, and everywhere. For example, one poem's called "Life Lesson at Pandapa's Pond," or Pond Mountain Wilderness Area. But I want to read a poem that I wrote last year, probably February 23rd-ish. So right before my birthday last year, a lifelong, very close friend passed away, and And he'd always called, on my birthday. And so last year he called early before my birthday because he knew he wouldn't be here on my birthday. So on my birthday, which here's an aside, this poem is said on February 21st, the day before my birthday. I celebrate 2 days because I was a complicated, traumatic birth for my mother. And so I always think that I was really born across 2 days. I won't go into gory details, but so I figure why not celebrate the 21st and the 22nd? And so I do. And so a friend wanted me to come over to North Carolina to visit with her for my birthday, and I kind of wanted to be here on my birthday because I'm going to hike with some of my friends close to home. And so I said, well, I'll come. I mean, that sounds awful. Anyway, she's one of my closest friends. It wasn't like I was begrudgingly going there. I had the best of all worlds. But I'm going to stop at Pilot Mountain before I get to your house because I've never been there. And I had this goal that I would go somewhere I had never been before. I have modest goals. And so the year before, and I had like 1 day left to fulfill that goal. So anyway, and so this is that poem, and it's about a butterfly. Morning cloak at Pilot Mountain. The serape draped across my chair back home shares the colors of this butterfly on this path, where I will stand for a few minutes watching it before I take the time to identify it by its name, Nymphalis antiopa, morning cloak. A harbinger of spring and morning colors is certainly not out of place on this February day, a solitary hike the way I have chosen to mourn my first love, my soulmate, a man who called me just before today from far away to say farewell before journeying to another place I will not join him, at least not in my own lifetime, not on this earth. What can rival a lifetime of loving someone? I wanted to come to a trail I had never hiked, to do something I had never done before, and here I am seeing something I never saw, a butterfly that makes me say, aha. Later, when I look at the serape he wore and then gave to me, something I kept close for 50 years, even as he was far away or farther, I will see colors shape-shifting into a butterfly. And if I drape the serape across my shoulders, remembering the one who gave it to me, I will perhaps feel as if I am lifting my wings like a morning butterfly or aging earth angel to join my wandering man of a soulmate, wherever he is gone, this last time. So anyway, this book is dedicated to that friend, and his family and partner I've been in touch with, and still in touch with. And so this is neither here nor there, but it's taken me almost a year. He and I attended historic Booker T. Washington High School in Columbia, South Carolina. And our old auditorium where, lots of things go on in the auditorium when you're in high school, assemblies where somebody's hair catches on fire because of the hairspray and stuff like that. But, and lessons and plays. Anyway, a lot of time, the plays where I was supposed to burst into tears, but the person forgot to give me the line that would make that happen. So it's like I burst into tears, but anyway. That our school no longer exists. The University of South Carolina wanted it, but one of the alums set it up so that the auditorium would stand forever. It's a long story, but anyway, it can't be torn down. And it's now a civil rights center, and we had our 50th reunion there. But there's a tree in one of the old stairwells. There's like a tree with little leaves with names and stuff. Anyway, yesterday they wrote me to say his little leaf was up, and that was kind of sweet. So, all right, so that was a sad poem. Let me read you another poem about an old friend who's still alive and well. And this is so cool. This is from an AT hike. You know, the day we saw Blue-Eyed Mary and Mary, yeah, you know that. What a day. You'll have to Google Blue-Eyed Mary to see this. Anyway, this is called Blue-Eyed Mary, My Old Friend. I would follow you anywhere, from your yard to a bog, from a bog to a mountaintop, even to the place we call old age. After more than 50 years, I can think of us as little girls traversing a mountain trail, me for the first time, thanks to the kindness of your kind-hearted parents. I also think of us as old women prepared to call ourselves old. Remember how we once sat and dug with our hands in the dirt, looking for bits of garnet? I still have mine in my jewelry box, along with the ring you gave me the afternoon we played dress up. At 66, we are both young and old. Now when we get together, we walk and study flowers. A violet is precious as a friendship when I see it through your hand lens. Yesterday, seeing Blue-Eyed Mary blooming for the first time in my life, I wished you were there with me in that meadow on Clinch Mountain. I wanted to hear you exclaim Collinsia verna as a chestnut-sided warbler sang overhead, and so I did in my own head, you as much there with me when we are apart as I am with anybody on this life's journey, when friends are as essential to a life as fall and winter are to a spring flower that will shed its seeds in summer to prepare to start again, blooming, always blooming. Life cycles is a constant childhood friend. So that's my friend Mary. I'm not 66 anymore, anyway. But one thing to know about Mary is, and also me, I've been hiking my whole life. You know, when I was a little girl, and we didn't call it hiking. You know, it was Daddy taking us off to the woods or to the swamp because I lived in near a swamp, and so I have these great memories. And just the backyard, wandering. You can wander wherever you are. A lot of these poems are just walking out my door around where I live. Long story short, in college, I did hike some, and Al and I were in a group called Trips and Expeditions where we organized for the student union fun treks to the natural world. But Mary is a botanist, and I remember one day she was so excited to take me to a bog. It was probably the first bog that I knew was a bog, or had been called a bog. I'd probably been in bogs, but didn't know what they were anyway. And I remember, this is terrible, being a little bored. And now I just love bogs. I mean, I just can't get enough. But there must have been something about Felicia, age 20, but I have learned that the pace of a botanist is not the pace of someone who's just like shooting ahead. You stop and you 15, 20 minutes an hour. And she's been patient with me. Now I've have the right pace for the stopping and studying and learning and stuff. It's kind of fun. This poem, let's see. The last section is called In the Right Direction, and they're poems set here, there, and everywhere. So I think I'll read two poems. And my son lives in Boulder. A lot of y'all know Guy. guy, can you believe it, is almost 35. And he's married to Flannery, and they have such great adventures. And when they come here, they have great adventures, on our trails and streets and with their family. But Flatirons is the range of mountains in Boulder. If you've been to Boulder, anyway. And so I try to hike there whenever I'm there. And so here's about one of my hikes on the Flatirons. Flatirons. Each time I hike the Flatirons, I meet a new challenge. Sometimes one my son assigns, sometimes one that arrives like an epiphany as I meander up and decide to try something new, something like scrambling across rocks as far as I can scramble safely. Such a meager achievement in the big picture of Boulder scene, and yet a huge success for me. Last time, on a new trail, I got lost. The rocks I rested on another planet. Every direction I looked, it all looked like the same gray matter. I could have used my phone. I could have panicked and called my son. But one thing I learned early on is to leave early enough on a hike to have time to find yourself before dark. I also depend on voices I hear. This time, the voice of a young mother carrying her toddler who paused with me when I called out to her on her ascent, opposite to my stalled descent. She mothered me with a Band-Aid for my ankle, scraped while walking in circles, and pointed me in the right direction before I ambled on down my rocky way, waving for farewell to her and her little boy. So that when I explained to my son where I was when I got turned around, and I mean literally around and around, it was about the size of where I'm standing. He knew exactly where it was, but anyway. So I just went around and around and thought, I'll just wait till I hear voices. But, it was just such a special act of kindness. People can be so kind. And I could have lived without the Band-Aid. I could have washed my ankle later. But the big deal was that she wanted to help me clean up right there on the trail. And plus, her little fella was like right there, and she was just like, ambling up the trail is the way people amble up and down our creeper trail. So the Flatiron trails are sort of like the creeper trails to people who hike them daily. It's fun to go up there. The cool thing, that day I didn't even have sticks, which I probably would have maybe been more adventurous, but I don't fly with sticks because I don't fly with, I only fly with a carry-on. I could have borrowed some, but so it was a real achievement for me to do that hike. And I just felt so great. And then when I got down, I had a delicious lunch, and then I went back again on another trail. So I'm gonna read, I guess, one last poem, unless some of you may have one you want to hear, and so I'll give you a chance to ask that. But one lesson that I want to share about my hiking is that I like to be mindful, best I can, of where of people who have walked before me. So, for example, I spent a lot of time in Saltville around the salt wells looking at birds and have for some years, and then walking here and there. It's so beautiful. It's one of my favorite places because when I feel sort of homesick for South Carolina, and I've been here 40 years, but I still get a little homesick for home, and I do visit there often. I go to Saltville because it reminds me of home, and for all kinds of reasons. And so over the years, I've learned as much as I can about the people who lived there before people colonized us. Anyway, it's fascinating. So y'all can Google it it's just good to know who walked there in places before we did. So this is similar. This is from a trip to South Carolina when I'd gone birding at Huntington Beach. And there's a place near Huntington Beach, which you can't go to South Carolina without juxtaposing the past and the present and the deep past and all of that. Anyway, there's a place near Huntington Beach called Brook Green Gardens, and for years I never went there. It just didn't appeal to me. Then one year I thought, I'm going to go. I was with a friend, and I saw a hawk. I just saw these amazing birds, wild turkeys. It was just beautifully wild, and as well as beautifully cultivated. And it's just sort of a disconnect, but there are trails there. And so now I do make a habit of going if I'm down that way. And so, and this is a poem from a day where I sat at one of the little places where you can have lunch and actually drank iced tea. Not something I ever drink much of, but it was that hot. So this is called Beyond the Garden Wall. Just past the old brick kitchen, around the corner from a statue, a golden statue of Dionysus, lie 2 fallow rice fields, fields where blackbirds sing, along with the ghost of workers sodden with mud, afraid of malaria, women who work dawn to dusk to plant and harvest rice. And there are replicas of rice trunks to show how flooding was manipulated to make a golden rice grow as if Senegal was not a continent away. You are supposed to stay on this trail that meanders past antebellum history alongside a creek with alligators and great blue herons that eat fish without minding that you are there. Sometimes a wood pewee sings too, or a crow or a hawk looking for prey. There are too many voices on this trail for your mind to settle into a quiet, the quietude of the contemplative. Thoughts can nag more than mosquitoes. They can make you fantasize about this trail just beyond a garden wall that might as well be a border between slavery and what looked like freedom, a freedom full of copperheads and alligators and malaria, and an overseer with a long gun. On a sunny day in early May, just after you drink a glass of iced tea, it is far too easy to traverse this history. The hard part is not the heat. The hard part is how easy it is for you, a tourist, to put one sandaled foot in front of the other and just go anywhere she wants to go.